welcome, and thank you for being here. We have Sally Sheppard, the Executive Director of the Cottage, with us today. And Sally, we had some questions of wondering how the increase in demand for your services have taken place with the pandemic that's currently going on.
At this current moment, actually, the amount of children that we see have slightly decreased. And the reason why I say that is because children are not in schools. Children are not around people who they typically do tell about when an incident of child abuse happens to them. And in fact, 90% of incidents of child abuse happen with a child's caregiver or in their home, in the place where they live. So at this moment, we've seen a slight decrease in our working with victims of child abuse. However, we anticipate a large increase in the coming weeks when children are again seeing their doctors, when they're going back to childcare, when hopefully they start going to camp, and most definitely when they start back into school into August. We are preparing for a pretty big increase in the need of our services because we find that children disclose abuse more to trusted adults, sometimes trusted adults who live outside of their home.
Okay, all right. And that leads me to my next question. How has your organization adapted to our new normal?
Yeah. Well, so we kind of focus in two ways. We focus as a crisis response. When there is an allegation or a suspicion of child abuse, DFACS and law enforcement call upon us to work closely with them to provide services to victims of child abuse and their families. And we've seen a slight decrease in the amount of times that we have been called out to be a part of that response. However, we continue to provide services of ongoing therapy and support groups to children and their families who have been impacted by child abuse during this time. So we've done something really cool, and we've began our telemental health services. We are providing therapy sessions to children, teenagers, and their caregivers during this time virtually through our telemental health. We are also providing online support groups, and these are support groups to parents of kids who have been abused, but also to adult survivors of abuse. We continue to provide our 24/7 response to adult survivors of sexual assault during this time as well. That is a number that we have not seen decrease during this time. That has stayed pretty much the same during this time as the number of adult survivors that we're working with. The decrease that we've seen is the number of kids. And I think that's because kids are stuck at home right now and they're not able to disclose abuse to folks who they're with.
Goodness. Okay. Thank you. And lastly, what do you need from the public during this time?
Okay. What I would really like to say to the public is thank you so much for your continued support of agencies such as the Cottage. The Cottage has a pretty strong base of folks who understand what we do, and they offer support to us in the way of monetary donations, friends of the Cottage. They also have donated cloth masks to us and other support services during this time. So I'd like to say a heartfelt thank you to them. Also give back Realty for recognizing us and our impact on the community as well. Y'all have been an amazing supporter. But also what I would really like to say to folks is please pay attention to children at this time. Please pay attention to children that maybe you don't necessarily live with, but children who for some reason have crossed paths with you in whatever way they might at this time, which I know is pretty limited given the fact that we're still continuing to social distance from each other. But look for signs that children may show that something different might be going on with them. If you notice a change in their behavior, if you notice any sort of physical marks, or if they tell you that something not so safe is happening to them or has happened to them recently, please pay attention to those because that's what I'm really worried about now. And then if you do feel like a child has been able to tell you about something that has happened to them, feel free to call our hotline, our 24/7 crisis hotline. Feel free to dial 911 and alert law enforcement. Feel free to call the Department of Family and Children's Services and alert them as well. Because it's really important for us to help protect our children right now because the folks who love children and surround children are a little bit lessened as this time as we're not able to have our kids go hang out at places that they normally go to.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're
Sally
welcome.
Sheppard, Executive Director of the Cottage in Athens. Thank you for being with us today, Sally.
My pleasure. Stay safe.
Thank you.